Welcome everybody to the SPHN webinar. This is the second edition of our new webinar series dedicated to the topic of infrastructure and process development at the 5 Swiss university hospitals for a responsible and efficient secondary use of routine health data. As you all know, probably SPHN has been instrumental in developing and expanding the data infrastructures at the university hospitals, not only with the financial support of hospitals, but also, of course, with a view to standardizing and interoperabilizing the data so that they are not only available and suitable for secondary usages within one hospital, but can also be pooled across several hospitals in an interoperable manner for research purposes, for example, in the field of personalized medicine. In today's issue, Patrick Hirschi will inform us about the developments undertaken in the data area at the University Hospital in Zurich, USZ, over the last 7 years, what organizational structures have emerged, what infrastructures have been in place, built, expanded. He will report on the challenges and successes that are also there thanks to SPHN, and he will show us what the next steps are. Patrick is the technical head of the clinical data platform for research at the USZ and a member of various SPHN working groups. Thank you very much, Patrick, for taking the time. We look forward to learn about the status quo of the hospital, the gaps and challenges, and the future outlook. The floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much, Katrin, for the introduction. Before we start, let's have a quick look at the agenda. I will start with the short introduction, just for setting the scene. Then I will show you the teams and the organization. So how did we organize ourselves? What teams and what boards did we establish to tackle these issues? Then I will show you our current clinical data platform, just an overview of how this looks like, the core data engineering services, our use case families. So what types of use cases do we currently have at USZ, and what use cases do we see for the future? And as a next point, I want to show you a bit the data maturity pathway, just a brief look also in the past. Where did we start and where did we end up now? And then in the end, just the acknowledgements and the discussion, as Katrin stated. I want to start with this quote here from the famous person. When the SPHN Phase 1 started back in 2017, we had quite a hard time to get things going. There was a lot of back and forth, and it seemed in the day-to-day life that we are a bit stuck and that we aren't able to make progress. However, now when I created these slides and looking back 7 years, it's unbelievable how much the whole landscape evolved and what we achieved during this time span. And I'm therefore very happy to present to you what this means for USZ. And yeah, we'll present you our journey over the last 7 years. Let's start with the teams and organization. Obviously, I only focus on the further use of data here. I won't show you all of the teams that are present at USZ. And these are spread over 4 directorates. Let's start with the ICT department. Obviously, it needs a team for ICT operations. There are multiple ones for server, network, and storage, so the whole infrastructure part. Then the clinical data platform team itself that does the data engineering work. The data governance team that handles all the regulatory aspects for the reuse of health-related data, and the solution architecture team that is having a look that just the data products are properly integrated in our IT landscape. The other directorate that is very important is the Directorate for Research and Education. There we have multiple teams that are handling all the process or project-related aspects of a research project. So we have the data services team that is doing the project management and setting up the project. Then we have regulatory affairs that is dealing with regulatory questions, that all the projects in the end up in a good status at the Data Governance Board. I will show this later. We have the Innovation Management Team. We have the Research Biobanking Service Center, which is handling the sample-related processes for research projects, and the Data Management Team that is setting up ECRFs, like forms to enter data for a specific study. Then we have 3 directorate independent teams. Those are the Legal Department, the Data Protection Office, and the Information Security Office. I think I don't need to explain this. On the other hand, we have the financial department. There we have a separate team that is handling all the financial data, administrative data in the Business Intelligence Competence Center and the platform development team. And finally, also the medical directorate with an own data management institution that is handling the clinical registries. If we have a look at the boards that were established, and those are all pretty new to USZ. So none of these existed 7 years ago, at least not in this format. We have first the demand board, and this is for a collection of business demands. So if anyone from the clinics wants an IT solution in our hospital, he first goes to the demand board, and then everything is collected that is needed. We do a quick feasibility check and also a prioritization and decision if this project can be done or not. We have the 7 sign-off board. This one comes after the demand. So once an IT solution has to be integrated in our hospital, it comes into the 7 sign-off process, and there we want to ensure that every new IT solution can be reasonably integrated in the IT landscape, that there is a sustainable financing available, and also that the solution is maintainable for the application operations team. The Data Governance Board basically gives the approval for the further use of data from our institution. Also there, if someone wants to reuse data in our hospital, he or she needs to do the proposal to the Data Governance Board. Then all the strategic, ethical, and legal checks are done. And once everything is okay, the further use of the data is approved. The Information Security Board is a bit a special board. It's part or one sign-off of these 7 sign-offs I talked about before is the information security sign-off. And this is done in a board. And there, obviously, the project can present the architecture of the given IT solution. And if everything is okay, also this can be approved. Now, let's have a look what we built technically for the clinical data platform. First, what is a clinical data platform? I think it's worthwhile to really state this here. A clinical data platform to us is the integration of heterogeneous data sources at a central place in the hospital. So all of the clinical data that you see depicted on the left side of this figure, this ends up in different source systems in the hospital. In the hospitals, we have like hundreds of them. Some are more relevant, some are less relevant, but we want to have all of them integrated in the end in our clinical data platform. Why do we want to do that? We have 2 main purposes. The first one is the clinical care process. There it's all about implementing data-driven tools and processes to facilitate the clinical care. It's like dashboards, reports, specific data marts, just providing the data and support the physicians in their daily work. And on the other hand, that's the part that my team is fulfilling, the research part. We are preparing, aggregating, and optimizing also data for the further use for research, not only in-house in our hospital, but also externally at ETH and the University of Zurich, and also for all the bigger national initiatives like SPHN is now, or the regional initiative that is also depicted here, the Loop Zurich. Now, the clinical data platform, it's not, people sometimes think it's a software that you can install on a server and then use it and you have a clinical data platform. Obviously, it's not like that. I want to show you our functional architecture that we have as a vision in our hospital. We don't have everything yet that is depicted here, but this is really our vision, and that's the aim that we want to go for. So we have on the left side all the different source systems from the clinics and departments. Then there is a major part, data integration, where it's all about how can we bring this data to the central instance, the clinical data platform, where we can further process the data and then store it in a way that is optimized for the further use of the data later. This can then be asked by data services. So if someone wants to have a report in our hospital, there is a standard service, you can ask for this, and then it's either them designing the report themselves, this is our self-service reporting vision, or it's ourselves that really develop the report for the physician and just deploy it to production. What's fairly new to us and where we don't have a good solution yet is for this machine learning operations in the bottom right corner. There it's about how can we operate a machine learning algorithm in our clinical data platform. And also important are the supporting processes around it, like the platform management, where it's about data catalogs, data lineage, where we can also present what is already here in the data platform, where we can monitor the data quality and also do data modeling tasks. And on the other hand, obviously also the infrastructure needs. So all of this that I talked about needs some kind of underlying infrastructure. And also there we have multiple services that need to be present for a hospital. What do we currently have in our clinical data platform? Currently, we have like 15 terabytes of tabular data, and together with all the imaging and genomic stuff, it's about 2 to 3 petabytes. It's hard to estimate because sometimes the objects are also stored redundantly, but those are like the ballpark figures for this. Obviously, we have genomic data in our clinical data platform. We will have all structured mutations ever reported in our hospital. That's a major achievement for us. We have all the medical imaging data, and there are about 250 other formats like videos or PDF documents and so on. We call this multimodal data. The infrastructure part I already mentioned. About the administrative data, we have about 2 million of patients, 10 million cases already in our data platform, ranging back to the early 90s. And in the hospital information system and the ICU system, we really have some bigger tables already because the data is not entered by hand from a physician, but is coming from sensors. And there we have tables where we already have more than 10 billion rows. So the data volume is growing massively. What services do we have in our data engineering department? We support the data specification process. So how do we come from the cohort definition and specific data categories to parameters? And in the end, really methods that we know what the physician wants for their research project. We have the data interoperability standards and quality. I already mentioned the quality monitoring. That's one side, being able to monitor it, but we also want to make this transparent to raise awareness also in the clinics for this. And a major part that was also very much supported by SPHN was the data interoperability. So how can we link clinical data to the standard terminologies like SNOMED, ICD-10, JOP, or others. We also improved a lot in data de-identification. There it's, I mean, for the tabular data, it's fairly simple, replacing IDs, doing date shift and so on. But for unstructured text reports and also for imaging data, it's a bit harder. There we implemented new solutions during this 7-year time span that just give us more flexibility to also work with these data types in research projects. And in the end, once the data is aggregated and also de-identified, we want to provision it to a researcher. And there we have a standard process now, which is sending the data encrypted in an encrypted channel to the researcher. So really a secure data transfer end-to-end. From a use case family perspective, we tried to gather this year like 230 use cases in the hospital. Some of them are already implemented, some of them are new and on our digitization roadmap. And we further consolidated these, and we ended up with 7 families. And these 7 use case families are the following. It's like analytical sandboxing and labs, where it's all about someone wants to analyze data in a specific environment. We have standard applications that produce and or consume data. We have this dashboarding and event streaming that really need near real-time data to present to the physicians. Then we have data curation that happens a lot in a hospital. For all the clinical registries, example given, or other use cases where you just need to curate the data before you can provide it to another use case. Then the exchange, I mentioned this, it's exchanging data with other institutions. Then learn and predict, there it's about integrating artificial intelligence and machine learning algorithms. And the standard reporting, so all of the not near real-time needs, all the delayed reporting. Example given, someone wants to see the latest figures and numbers once a month. Now let's come to the data maturity pathway. You see the time span here, and I just listed the 5 most important teams for the data reuse and where we evolved a lot during this time span. When we started in 2015, 2016, we just had 2 data engineers in the research department and 1 project manager. And you now see depicted the SPHN phases here. Phase 1 was from 2017 to 2020 and phase 2 from 21 to 24. And we already see for the first phase, and we have to say 1 dot here is a head, not a full-time equivalent. And I also want to mention that not all of these positions are obviously financed by SPHN and not solely driven by SPHN. But I hope that it's that you see that it helped us a lot here. So we were able to grow constantly over this time span and to also grow in a healthy manner. And we see that during phase 2, also the other departments like data governance, data protection, and the information security department was extended. And this really helped us in handling all the research projects in our institution. And you see this depicted below with this little plant that is growing to a tree at the end. I will come back to this tree on a later slide. Now, the big question for us is what happens after SPHN phase 2? So what happens mid-24 or end 24? And this currently is unknown to us. The biggest achievements, thanks to SPHN, I tried to categorize them in 4 categories, like data, people, culture, and governance. From a data perspective, I already mentioned the developments for the multimodal data, so genomics and imaging data. The identification process was mentioned, also data quality and semantics. That really helped us a lot in understanding our own data and being able to share it with other institutions. Then from people perspective, you saw the team growth just on the slide before. Also the knowledge management and knowledge transfer, the network we have now and the outreach. I just want to mention here, when I started at USZ back in 2015-16, I didn't know any of the other data engineers from the other hospitals. And now we really have this network. We know each other. We can exchange about failed and failed projects, but also about success stories. And this helps us a lot, not only in the research sector, but also in the clinical sector. And from a culture standpoint, the whole organization was able to mature a lot for data projects. We have a data community ongoing in our hospital. We try to really bring this data literacy point to each and everyone in our hospital. It's a big task, but yeah, also here we are constantly getting better. And the governance I already mentioned, we were able to establish a data governance team, a data governance board, and we now really have the transparency what further uses of healthcare related data happens at USZ. Does this mean that we are happy with where we are now? We are partly happy, but the job is not finished. And why isn't it not finished? This brings me to the next steps. The big part that we are working on right now in Zurich is we want to finalize and approve our hospital data strategy that we wrote together with external support in the last year and beginning of this year. And we prepare a submission for a new data platform. Because we saw when I presented these use case families, there are use case families that are quite new, like the artificial intelligence and machine learning needs. And to be able to tackle the issues that are coming together with these use cases, we need to modernize our technical architecture and extend it with new capabilities that didn't play a role like 10 years ago when we bought our first clinical data platform. We also want to establish new concepts like this data mesh and data product approaches and the data roles in the hospital. There it's all about data ownership, so that really our physicians also feel responsible for the data that they produce and that comes from their department. And to professionalize our data services even further. There are also several major projects from the digitization roadmap that started in parallel and that will help us a lot, example given the integration framework and the container platform, which also support us with new capabilities. One other important point is the loop. This is a regional initiative with ETH, University of Zurich, USZ, KISP, Balgrist, and the Psychiatric University Clinics. Here we want to onboard new hospitals to the network. We want to extend the SPHN core data set even further. So we want to build on top what we already have built with SPHN. And just extend it with services that are currently missing to us. And the biggest point I want to mention here is to handle translational research projects. So really the processes to bring algorithms from the research projects into the productive clinical environment. How does this look like? On the slide, we have the clinical source systems. They are integrated in the clinical data platform. I already mentioned that. We have the archive system where all of the objects are lying, like images and genomic data. And this data now is integrated for research purposes in this SPHN database. This is the basis for the so-called SPHN connector application, which transforms the data from this relational format into a graph structure that was designed together with the university hospitals and the data coordination center. and it ends up in specific folder shares. And once the data is there, we are able then to transfer the data onto the external infrastructures that are on ETH or other biomed IT nodes. In our case, it's the ETH in Zurich. And the data can then be reused for research projects. What we now also started is this use case above. TuneInsight is a startup from EPFL, and we are doing now a pilot project with them for federated queries and analytics, so that people from outside the institution can do queries on our data without seeing individual data points. So all of them are aggregated queries, aggregated results, aggregated analysis, and the data is never leaving our hospital. It's quite a new technology that we want to implement here, and we are very happy that we can do this project together with TuneInsight and under this SPHN network. Now you see here a red line. We want to extend our internal infrastructure also with high performance compute like capabilities from ETH. We call this extended workbench. So this is an infrastructure that is not in the hospital. It is at ETH in Zurich, but the governance of this infrastructure relies to the hospital. So for us, it's like really an extended workbench where we can do things that we couldn't do on our internal infrastructure. And obviously from this extended workbench, we can then also present the data to the different project spaces on Biomed IT, where the researcher can analyze the data in the end. So if we have a look at this again, this gives us this picture here. I tried to like depict the data zones. We have source systems. We have this kind of data fabric where we have the clinical data platform and where we really aggregate and de-identify the data. We have a data exploration method with this federated query, federated analytics from TuneInsight, where people can get a first glance of the data, can generate research ideas, and then start a project afterwards. We have extended workbench capabilities where we can do high performance computing. And also we have this data analysis part for individual research projects. And yeah, this brings us the following possibilities. I already mentioned these. We have now everything in place to really handle research projects in an efficient manner. But we have to further professionalize it. And this brings me to this slide here. For us, it's all about the momentum that we have right now. We see that in Switzerland, we now have the people, we have the knowledge, and we also have the momentum. And it doesn't matter if we depict it as this little plant that is growing to a tree, or like Bram Stiltjes from the University Hospital in Basel stated it in the previous webinar, like moving an elephant. We have the momentum now, but the window of opportunity is short because we see SPHN phase 2 is ending. We have to somehow operationalize what we have right now, and we have to think about how can we further build on this after SPHN phase 2. So how can we make our work sustainable? And to come back to our tree, it's really depicted like this. We have the soil, we have the trunk and everything of the tree. Those are all the teams and organizations and IT infrastructures that are needed to really handle clinical data. Just to be in the end capable of harvesting these blue apples there, like doing research projects, implementing data products, gaining business insights, or establish personalized treatments, having transparency over our own data. Those are like the use cases. So we have to ask ourselves, how can we secure sustainable funding for the soil, the roots and the trunks and branches? Because without them, we don't have any apples in the end. So we are thinking about the financing and the operating model of our data infrastructure. Then we have to ask the question how to transfer the knowledge. So how can we bring more soil and plant new trees? It's all about onboarding also new institutions. Currently, we only have the 5 university hospitals and some of the bigger cantonal hospitals, but how can we expand on this one? Because in the end, we want to have as much data as possible available for research in Switzerland. How do we avoid ending up with a set of disconnected trees, but no real ecosystem, so no forest? There it's all about using the SPHN interoperability framework that was designed together with the 5 university hospitals. So we need to really maintain this and also further extend it for new data types. And how can we reach more people, connect further, and get better together? And that's the biggest point for me for SPHN. It's about the network. So we need to communicate together because every hospital has the same issues. We can't tackle them with the same solutions, unfortunately, just because our landscape all looks a bit different. But we can exchange about success stories and failed projects and learn from each other. And that's the biggest benefit from SPHN. Now, coming to a personal wish list. So what I see, what currently is missing, the education part in Switzerland, we are very strong, but example given, we teach data engineers, we teach data scientists, but there are no good education programs for clinical data engineers and clinical data scientists. And also what we see is that these new graph capabilities that are implemented in SPHN, the use of semantic web technologies, this is not very known. It's not taught at universities. And so this makes it difficult for us to find the right people to really support us in the projects. We need to harmonize, and here it's meant that we really use and extend the SPHN interoperability framework. I already mentioned this before. We should avoid shortcuts, just thinking I can implement my own data model, it's much faster and I do whatever I want. This is not sustainable and this doesn't help the network. We really have to pay attention that we can now use what we did in the last 7 years. And obviously also propagate the use of clinical ontologies and terminologies in Switzerland. For politics, we need solutions for the national identifiers. There are some good drafts available now. And it's also important for us that Switzerland invests in programs like this DigiSanté program for a seamless digitization in healthcare. It doesn't help us directly in our work, but indirectly it helps us a lot, because if the whole source system landscape gets simpler and the data is described there in detail already at the moment where the data is captured, this helps us a lot in integrating the data at the end in the clinical data platform. And obviously also the regulatory landscape needs to be simplified in Switzerland. The incentives, we need a secured base financing for the already connected hospitals, just to have sustainability for the soil and the trunk that I mentioned before of the tree. And we need initial financing for the onboarding of new hospitals, because they need to establish all of what I have shown now with the teams, organizations, and infrastructures in their hospital, and they need an initial financing for that. And in the end, it's also about incentivizing having good data. So coming back to the main messages, we need clinical data engineers and data scientists. The clinical part is underlined here. We don't need another standard, so we have to avoid shortcuts and really use and extend the SPHN interoperability framework. We need commitment and pragmatism. Is for the reuse of healthcare data, also from politics. And we need sustainability for our infrastructures, because in the end, everyone is benefiting from this. So I'll come to the last slide now, the acknowledgements. It's always a bit of a boring slide in presentations, I know, but I really want to take the opportunity here to thank all of the people that were involved in these 7 years. The list is far away of being complete. This wouldn't have place on just one slide, but I want to really point out 3 persons here. It's Michael Weiskopf, my boss during a major part of this time, who supported myself a lot. And I think we also did find good solutions for most of the problems that were arising during this phase. I want to thank Katrin Krameri and Tos Geiger, most of all for just connecting all of the different hospitals and keeping the momentum in SPHN phase 1 and 2 and just support us as best as they could. I really appreciate this. And last but not least, my very own team. Yeah, it's amazing what we have achieved in our hospital, and I hope that we can further build on top of this. So thank you, everyone, and we're open for discussion now.
Thanks a lot, Patrick, for this very informative overview of what has been achieved at the USZ, and also for your critical look how we can lead this ecosystem sustainably into the future.